Stories in Motion 5. You people are in the abroad now. The WhatsApp messages started small. A forwarded meme, a birthday prayer, an old photo from Lagos. Then came the voice note. Amaka, I beg, I just need small help this month. School fees for the twins. Nee, my guy, you dey enjoy you. I hear say pounds now 1,600 naira now. I beg, run small something for your boy now. Auntie, mommy said you help with the hospital bill. You're in London now, Abi? The assumption was always the same. But the moment you landed in the UK, money rained from the sky and everything was solved. Nobody saw the half-empty fridge, the delayed heating bill, the awkward glances exchanged at the till when the total was more than expected. They didn't see Amaka reusing old wigs or Niyi rationing visits to the African shops. All they saw was the myth of the abroad. One day, after a particularly long shift, Amaka slumped into the dining chair and read another message asking for money. She placed the phone on the table and stared at it like it had insulted her personally. Lee came in and sat across from her, still in his delivery jacket, face weathered by cold and time. I have to send £20 to Auntie Gloria this morning, he said quietly. Amaka nodded without looking up. That's the third time this month. Silence. What are we even doing? She whispered finally. All this. The stress, the separation, the loneliness, and still everyone expects from us. Kneeling back and rubbed his face. We wanted better for the kids. And are they better? She asked, a voice sharper than she meant. Tobi, who had been standing at the top of the stairs, froze. He tiptoed back to his room, stomach clenched. He didn't want to hear the rest. In school, he had stopped correcting people when they said his name wrong. Tobi instead of Toby. He laughed when they laughed, nodded when he didn't understand, blended in like a smudge of paint on a grey wall. Ozzy had started staying out longer. She said it was school clubs. But once, Toby saw her get into a car with some older kids and drive off. When he told Amaka, she sighed and said, "She's finding herself." But Jose wasn't finding herself. She was losing pieces she didn't know how to hold on to. One night, she came home late, past 11. Her hoodie was soaked from the rain, eyeliner smudged, eyes dull. Niyi had waited up. The argument that followed shook the house like thunder. You think you can come home and go like you own the place? You're not even here most of the time, she shouted back. Don't raise your voice at me. Why? You barely notice I exist unless I mess up. Hamaka stepped in, voice raised, the first time in months. Enough! This is not who we are. Ozzy scoffed. Who are we now, Mom? Really? Who? And with that, she disappeared into her room, slamming the door with finality. The next morning was quiet. Toby poured his own cereal. The milk was almost finished, but he didn't say anything. Amaka left early for a 24-hour shift. Niyi stayed in bed longer than usual. The silence stretched. That evening, as the wind howled outside and the radiators clicked reluctantly to life, they had dinner in silence. Just potatoes and boiled eggs. No stew, no talk. Just chewing and clinking forks. Afterward, Toby went to his room and lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. He thought of Freedom Street, how loud it used to be, doors slamming, neighbors greeting, TV playing Nollywood films too loudly, his mom yelling at Ozzy to turn down her music, the generator humming like a heartbeat. Now, he could hear the fridge humming, nothing else. He missed the old noise. He missed the version of his family that didn't feel like strangers eating at the same table. He closed his eyes and tried to remember his dad's booming laugh, The one that used to shake the kitchen table during Sunday breakfast, but he couldn't. Not clearly. Not anymore. Stories in motion 6. Winter didn't arrive all at once. It crept in like guilt, slowly, silently, until everything was stiff with it. The trees lost their color. The sky turned white, then grey, then black, all in the span of a few hours. The sun began disappearing before 4 p.m., like it too had given up on staying in England. Tobi hated winter. He hated the heavy coat he had to wear every day. He hated how the cold beat through the gloves and numbed his fingers. He hated that the mornings were so dark that he often arrived at school before sunrise. But what he hated most was how winter made their home feel more like a shelter and less like a sanctuary. There was no more family dinner. Everyone ate in shifts. Amaka was almost never home. She picked up extra shifts just to cover heating bills and groceries. Neye, exhausted from deliveries and the cost of silence, stopped arguing with Ozzy. He stopped speaking much at all. Ozzy drifted further away. Her phone was always in her hand. Her laughter, when it came, was bitter and private. She barely acknowledged her parents. One day, Tobi overheard her say to someone on the phone, "No, I don't really live with my family. I just sleep there." That one sentence stayed with him for days. At school, he started acting out. Nothing too wild, just little acts of rebellion. Talking back to the teacher, not submitting homework, picking a small fight with a boy who kept mocking his accent. His form tutor called Neye, who sighed and promised to talk to him, but the talk never came. It snowed for the first time in late January, thin and quiet. Tobi stood by the window and watched it fall. Ozzy walked past him without a word. Neye was asleep on the couch. Amaka was still at work. The house was silent, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full of everything no one was saying. A week later, an ice storm trapped them all indoors. Buses stopped running. Deliveries were cancelled. Schools were shut. For the first time in months, all of them were in the house at the same time for more than a few hours. It was awkward at first. 4 people in 4 separate corners brought together, pretending they were all alone. Tobi played FIFA on mute. Ozzy watched YouTube videos with AirPods on. Neye scrolled his phone endlessly. Amaka made tea but didn't offer anyone a cup. But then something small happened. The electricity blinked. Then it went out. For the first time in England, they were without light. The house fell into deep, dense silence, and something about that silence felt too familiar, too Nigerian. Cracked distance between them. Neye sighed and lit the emergency candle bought from Poundland. "This reminds me of when NEPA used to strike on Friday night," he said. Amaka smiled softly, surprised at the memory. "And we'd light mosquito coils and tell ghost stories. You always exaggerate your own." "I didn't exaggerate. You just scared easily." Ozzy looked up. "I remember." Tobi grinned. "Almost every day. Our mom used to cook by torchlight many nights. I still have the burn mark from one of the mosquito coils on my wrist." Amaka smiled, rolling up her sleeve. That night, they made amala on the gas cooker, eating by candlelight wrapped in blankets. The heat of the soup flowing more than just their fingers. They didn't talk about their problems. They didn't solve anything, but they laughed, and for a few precious hours, they remembered what it felt like to be a family. The lights came back before midnight. No one cheered. No one rushed to plug in devices either. The silence that followed was no longer empty. It was peaceful. It was something. Stories in motion 7. The quiet after the storm didn't last. February rolled in with longer nights. endless drizzle, and report cards that made hearts sink. Tobi failed 2 subjects. Ose skipped a math test. Both got notes sent home, but no one really yelled. It was like the family had grown too tired to fight, like everything was underwater and sound didn't carry the same weight. On a dull Saturday morning, Tobi came into the living room to find me staring blankly at the framed photo on the wall, the one they'd brought from Lagos, the last memory of Freedom Street. Everyone was smiling in that photo. There was sunlight, color, motion. Sometimes I think we should have stayed, Niyi said softly. Tobi froze. It was the second time his dad had said it out loud. I miss who we were, Niyi continued, his voice cracking. I miss myself. Tobi didn't know what to say. He just sat beside him. Later that week, Ozzy didn't come home for 2 days. Amaka called and called, no answer. Although they later learned from her best friend's mother that she had pleaded to stay over at theirs and assured she was safe. When Ozzy finally walked through the door, eyes red and hoodie soaked, she was met by silence. No shouting, no scolding. Niyi just looked at her and said, "Are you okay?" Ozzy sat down slowly. I don't know. It was the most honest any of them had said in weeks. The next day, Amaka made a decision. She left a note on the fridge before heading to work. Therapy. It's free through the NHS. I'm going. You don't have to come, but I'm tired of pretending we're okay. Not because of the idea itself, but because it was written down in bold ink. In a house where feelings were usually swallowed like bitter pills, the note sat like a confrontation. 2 weeks later, Niyi went for his first session. He didn't talk much, just listened, cried a little, walked out with puffy eyes and quiet relief. Ozzy began talking to the school counselor, then a youth support worker. She didn't change overnight, but she started spending more time at home, more helpful and interested in conversations. Tobi noticed she played more Afrobeat when she thought no one was listening. Tobi, he started writing. Nothing special, just scribbles, short things in notebooks, characters based on his family, his street in Lagos, his school in Manchester, superheroes with Yoruba names. Boys who miss home but found strength in small things. His sister noticed, entered him in a local writing competition. He won 2nd place. At dinner that night, Niyi raised a glass of Malta Guinness. To Tobi, the writer of this family, he said with a smile that almost felt like old times. Ozzy clinked her glass against his. Better not forget us when you blow. I won't, Tobi said, grinning. Amaka reached out and brushed his cheek. You already remember us better than we remember ourselves. For a few minutes, laughter returned. Not loud, not perfect, but real. Start. So, make sure you do not miss the final part of this story, where everything comes together. But the cracks hadn't vanished, they were still behind the laughter. In the lingering silences, in the bank alerts, in the unread messages from home asking for more. But now, the family acknowledged them. They no longer walked around pretending the walls were smooth. They were still figuring how to patch them. Some days were worse than others, but the difference was this: they were facing the cracks together. And that, after a long while, felt like hope. If you know anyone that might be interested in stories like this, don't keep it to yourself. Share with them and talk about it.